Let's take a few minutes to talk through how you could approach reading a text that you're going to write an analysis of. I'm going to use the text, How Much Math Do We Really Need? I have this linked in this week's activities. And so first I'm going to talk through some steps and then I'll talk through some annotations that I made on that assignment. The slides I'll talk through today are about ways to approach the first and second time that you read through the text that you're going to do your rhetorical analysis on. But you'll probably need to read it a lot more times than just two. You'll read it a few times before you even begin writing as you're generating ideas for your rhetorical analysis. You'll keep coming back to the text as you compose your draft, and then probably read a few more times as you work on your revision. The very first thing that you're probably going to do when you start reading the text is to do a quick genre analysis, like figuring out how you're going to work through that text. So that might include identifying the parts of the text as you begin reading. How has the author designed this text for you to work through it? What kinds of features did they use to support or clarify their organization? And then how those genre features support the argument. So if there are headings in the text to show you subsections, how do those reinforce or demonstrate the argument? Does the author use citations? And if so, how do those support the author's ethos? So when we take a look at this text, How Much Math Do We Really Need? From the database Gale Opposing Viewpoints, I want to point out that the beginning of this, from this quote up here, down through these three items that are numbered, is all introductory material that's created by Gale Opposing Viewpoints to help you preview the text. So this part up here is what's called an abstract. That is not created by the author, that's created by this database, as are these three questions that are there to help you preview the text. Now, to conduct an analysis of this text, these questions and this abstract could help us make sure we're on the right track with what the argument is and what kinds of things that we might notice in the rhetorical analysis, but they're not actually a part of the author's text. The introduction actually begins right here, where it says 27 years have passed. And if I just do a quick scan of this text, I can see that the author is using headings to help organize the argument. So these headings say the marketing of math, 2 questions about math education, and the need for math. That gives me a little preview of what the text is about. The next thing that I'm going to do as I start reading is understand what the author's argument is. So typically the first time you read a text, you're reading just for comprehension. What is this about? And then trying to figure out, well, what is the author trying to say? So not just what's the topic, but what is the author saying about this topic? And so a quick argument identification might include identifying a thesis or a claim in the introduction. This would be a one-sentence statement of the author's argument. Can you find that? Usually we say, or we're used to a thesis being at the end of an introduction, but it could appear somewhere else in the paragraph. And remember that an introduction can be more than one paragraph long. We want to see, is this argument restated in different ways throughout the sections of the text or in the conclusion? And then we can also use Chapter 6 in the Wain-Writer to figure out what kind of argument is being made. Is it an evaluation argument, a rebuttal, a proposal argument, a definition argument? And by understanding the criteria that the authors of Chapter 6 use to describe each of these types of argument, we might be able to see evidence of that in the text. Finally, to make sure that you understand the argument, you should try rewriting that argument in your own words. So when we take a look back at how much math do we really need, we look just at these 2 introduction paragraphs. A couple of things are happening. One, we see in this first section right here some context for this author's writing. This is really what is called the exegence of the text, what the author is responding to. And here it's a response to this report, Nation at Risk, and the creation and selling of mathematics education programs. Here then is a statement of the author's argument. Unfortunately, the marketing of math has become similar to the marketing of creams to whiten teeth, gels to grow hair, and regimens to build a beautiful body. In this particular essay or article, the thesis is really easy to find. It's standing here by itself. That might not always be the case in the articles you're reading for this project or in articles you read later on in the semester for your research. Okay, so I've identified a thesis statement. I remember that the headings reinforce that argument, and I can look down here for a statement to reinforce that argument in the conclusion. We survived the new math of the 1960s. We'll probably survive this math evangelism as well. So this refers back to what the author says in the beginning about pedagogical innovations. But I want to figure out too what kind of argument this is. And so I'm going to posit that this is a definition argument. And one of the things pointed out in Chapter 6 about definition arguments is that a definition argument relies on identification and explanation of criteria. So I want to see, are there criteria in here to support this author's statement that math marketing is like marketing of these kinds of beauty products? Indeed, I see that here in this first section, the author highlights the steps of aggressive marketing. 3 steps to aggressive marketing. Convincing people that we need these things for a good life, embarrassing people who don't have these things, and making people think that they must buy these because it's their right to have a good life. Then he explains in each of these 3 paragraphs how each of those criteria are fulfilled through the marketing of math. So I think this is a pretty clear-cut definition argument. Marketing math is like marketing beauty products, or has become like marketing beauty products. Once I've identified the argument, I want to work to begin analysis of that. How is the author trying to persuade me that his or her argument is valuable or valid? How is the author trying to convince me to agree with them? So a quick analysis of the rhetorical appeals that the author is using might include looking for statements that make you respond emotionally, whether that's favorably or unfavorably. Looking for facts or figures that the author uses to establish concrete evidence. And looking for ways that the author works to demonstrate their knowledge or authority on the topic. When I come back to how much math do we really need, I see a few things stand out on just a first reading. One place where I see the author pointing to a question of evidence is here, where the author looks at this review by the Education Department and these math scores from the National Assessment of Educational Progress. So this would be a place where they're trying to use concrete evidence to support the fact that the efforts to innovate math education have not helped change that. Here, the author raises a second question: how much math do you really need in everyday life? And this is a case of the author trying to appeal to our values, appealing to our sense of time and what we care about, what matters to us. So this would be what we call an appeal to pathos, where he says, how much math do you need in everyday life? Ask yourself that, and then list all these other people. One place where I feel like I have sort of a personal emotional reaction to the text is here, where the author talks about people wanting to make sure that their children, their families have access to this good life. So I see this other kind of appeal to pathos, but flipping that there, maybe almost making me feel kind of weird or bad if that's something that I want for my children. As a teacher, of course, as a teacher who cares about pedagogical innovation and cares about learning new ways to reach my students, this phrase, irrelevance of pedagogical innovation, is a strong statement to me, and it makes me feel yucky, to say the least. So that's just a quick gloss of rhetorical appeals, and I'm going to have to read back through to find a lot more of them. The next thing I want to do, though, to get ready to write my analysis or to get ready to plan my analysis is to gauge my response. So after reading through the text once or twice, you probably have a sense of how you feel about the author's argument or approach. Jot down that reaction. That might be a draft of your thesis statement. How effective or ineffective is the author in convincing you of their argument and why? And then you're going to want to reread the text with a pen in hand to begin to identify the evidence to support that analysis, looking more at the construction of the argument and the rhetorical appeals. So one thing I want to show you is just what my printout page of this text looks like. This is just the first page of my annotations, and this again is just my first time reading through the text to identify things like how the text is organized, to see if I can see where the exigence comes from. What is the author responding to? What's their argument? How are they using headings? Here I pointed out where the criteria of this kind of marketing are. So this was where I was trying to figure out what kind of argument is this. Oh, it's a definition argument, and here are criteria. Down here and over on the side, I have places where I tried to jot down and rewrite the author's argument, to paraphrase it, to put it in my own words. So where I can see the author's trying to say these products may be as unnecessary as math education, or math education innovation might be as unnecessary as things like creams for whitening your teeth. Like, we really just don't need them. So I'll put these slides up so that you can re-access the steps for an initial read-through of the text that you're analyzing for Project 1. But you're going to have to do a little bit of this conversation with the text, use your annotations, and keep coming back to that text as you compose your analysis.